so I'll have to make that.
Yeah, sure, that's okay.
Mick, can I have the water?
What do you want?
The water. Yeah. Oh, sorry, of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you want to make the first
Oh,
announcement?
okay, yeah,
As,
thank you.
As I'm not currently chair.
That's fine, no, that's
is that
fine.
okay?
Yes, that's fine. So, Councillor Wild sends his apologies this evening. So, Councillor Carter, as the Mayor, will be chairing the meeting this evening. Just to let you know as well, in the agenda items, the second draft of the budget will be debated after the reports for the outsourcing payroll, data protection, GDPR information support, and a proposal for the Town Council magazine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. And item number, first of all, let me welcome you to the Sandwich Town Council Finance and General Purposes Committee. The reason why I always say the title and the date is obviously so that members of the public know which committee and which date it is. So this on Monday the 11th of December 2023 at 6:30 to transact the business on the agenda below. As stated by the Town Clerk, the Chair, Councillor Colin Wiles, can't be here, so I'll be chairing the meeting on his behalf. Item number 1 is apologies for absence received, please.
Thank you. So we have apologies this evening from Councillor Colin Wiles, that's due to a family commitment, and Councillor Jeff Franklin due to illness.
Thank you very much for that. And item number 2 is declaration of interest, and this is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests from members in respect of the business to be transacted on this particular agenda tonight. Do I have any declarations of interest at all?
No.
That's none, thank you. That's good. And item number 3 is the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee, and this is to receive the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee, which was held on the 20th of November 2023, and to consider any matters arising from those minutes that is not covered elsewhere in this agenda this evening. So, Councillor Chuka.
So just a couple of things. At the last meeting, I'm not sure the Town Clerk was here, but I raised some outstanding actions which are noted here, which is great, but there's no updates on them. So I'd just like to know that we'll get a response to each of those, and some of them are a few months back. So business continuity plan, report on the play areas, STC assets register, closing the STC Facebook page, and a rolling action list to capture the actions.
Indeed. I'll just hand you over to the Town Clerk.
Thank you. Yes, sadly, there's been illness at the Town Council, which I'm sure most people are aware. Also, the priorities are, I have had other priorities that have been overtaking these actions, but I'm hopeful that with the Christmas New Year break, in the new year, these will be something that can be captured and we can brought forward.
Okay, and then I just had the second thing was we had a discussion that's come back to today's agenda around the outsourcing of payroll. But at the last meeting, I asked a number of questions around the decision of the three that were selected. So there were about 4 or 5 questions which aren't represented in the minutes, but I don't think are necessarily answered in terms of what we got presented today. So I'm happy to pick them up at that stage.
Okay.
But I felt immaterial to the place we'd arrived at in terms of free bids.
Oh, that's indeed, yeah, definitely. So you pick them up on the agenda item.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, they must be answered in one way or the other this evening. That's great. Was there
No, I'm fine.
Sorry,
No,
thank you.
sorry.
Councillor Black.
Yes, thank you. There were a couple of items in addition to what Councillor Chuka has said. Draft terms of reference would be back on the agenda. Do we have a date for that at all?
So that will be coming back to council on the 18th of December.
And that's all of the draft terms of reference for all of the committees?
Yes,
Will that include the HR committee?
yes it does.
Because the other issue I've got is that we haven't heard any more about an HR committee, and I thought it was this group that was initially setting it up.
I don't think that wasn't my understanding. It's usually the membership is agreed by council. So the terms of reference will be on the 18th of December, and I will be doing a report about Human Resources Committee proposal as well. So hopefully we can get the membership agreed if the terms of reference are adopted, and that means that hopefully they can meet in the new year.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So did I have a proposer and seconder for the previous minutes, please? So that's Councillor Breen
And I'll
proposing
second.
and Councillor Anderson seconding. Thank you for that. And all those in favour, please signify.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's everybody. So that's passed. So that's it. Thank you for that. And item number 4 is public participation. And this is a 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the town clerk prior to noon on the day of the meeting. Do we have any?
No requests.
No requests. Thank you very much, town clerk. As was stated earlier this evening, item number 5, second draft of the budget, will now be pushed to the end of the agenda. Do we have to agree that with?
Yes, please.
If that's
Yep,
okay.
thank you.
So I will propose that we push it to the end of the agenda. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gray, thank you. And all those in favour of moving it to the end of the agenda, please. Thank you. Okay, so we move on, and we have item number 6 is a proposal to outsource the payroll, and this is members to receive a report from the town clerk with a proposal to outsource the preparation of payroll for staff employed by both STC and STBF. 3 quotations have been sought and a comparison table has been prepared for consideration. Members are invited to recommend to council which organisation they would prefer. This is attachment number 3, and we do need a decision this evening on this one. So,
Am I okay to go through my questions first?
So
Is there
indeed, yeah, that's a very good idea.
overarching questions rather than the detail today?
If you
So some of these,
start.
yeah. One of the questions I asked was how were these 3 companies identified? Because they're all small, and they're not located locally, not that they should be necessarily. So I just wanted to know how, first of all, the 3 of them were identified.
So how I approached this was other companies were approached, but it was either that they were too small, that they couldn't actually consider 10 employees, they didn't have capacity for that, or they were organisations. Some of them were very large organisations, and they said the council just wasn't big enough to be viable for them to take on doing payroll.
So a number of companies were approached.
A number of companies were approached, and a lot of them as well insisted that you have the HR support as well as the payroll, and I didn't think that was something that council wants to explore at the moment. But I do believe that the payroll provider outsourcing is a definite step forward. It will actually mean that we have more capacity, because Karen's time is taken up a lot with payroll, and I just think it doesn't make sense.
Okay. What criteria was applied to ensure that each company meets our requirements? So probably part of what you've just said, but was there anything more in terms of analysis of them in relation to what they can deliver?
It wasn't very scientific, because it was literally contacting a lot of companies. Is this something you would even consider? I say the larger companies, it was no, because you're not large enough. the small, one-man bands, I call them, said no, they didn't have capacity. So these were the three that I managed to locate, and it was tricky. I went to other clerks and other councils to find out who they'd used previously.
Yeah.
And,
That's the sort of thing I was wanting to hear, I suppose. Have we checked their credit rating in terms of each of the companies? Because if we're going to select one, payroll is really important for staff. Just want to make sure we don't choose the one that we don't really want long term. So
I have relied on obviously the other councils, clerks, their recommendations. I do personally have experience of working with one of the companies, so I am very
they've all
happy
been
that,
endorsed. And then the other thing was business continuity arrangements. Have we looked at all to make sure that they have got those? So again, particularly if it's from a distance, have they got sufficient robustness around their delivery to ensure that we don't have it falling over and therefore staff not getting paid?
So critically what to say here is the reports that are run, we still will be making the payments ourselves. So we're not relying on these providers to actually make the payments from our bank account.
Okay.
Karen was still doing that part of the proceedings, but this is purely to set up so that we will tell them, we will communicate with them if there is overtime, if there's sickness, all these sorts of things that fed into their system. They generate the pay slips and do P60s, P45s, all that's kind of the support. But the payment would still be us, we're still making the payment. So there isn't any problem. I think Karen wants to add to that.
Our finance officer.
I just wanted to add that when we used a payroll provider before I took it on, they did the payments. They debited our Sandwich Town Council account and credited the accounts of all the employees. So it was a sort of two transactions, but they made those transactions.
But in this instance, we will pay the employees and we will pay their tax burden and their pension contributions.
That's up to Jill and up to the payroll providers.
Yeah, so with the pension calculations, they have all been asked to quote for that as well. But it's not, I'm not suggesting that they take over everything to do with payments from the, payments to the employees. I still think that that's something that we should have control. Because obviously it's very good for the council to check when they do these payroll reports. It's good for a double check, the officers to check that they're accurate. But that's the way I'm used to working, and certainly that's what I've been asking these payroll providers to quote for.
So you're assured enough that each of these companies are sufficiently robust, sufficiently
set up,
prepared to do the service that we need.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you have any more questions?
That's my notes.
Councillor Carter, Mrs.
So I just wanted to provide, what I was questioning, will they be preparing calculation for the pension side? Well, I understand Sandwich Town can't do the actually bank transfer, but are they going to prepare all the paperwork, pay slip, pension deduction, calculation for us?
Yes, so they calculate all the reports. That includes all the income tax, national insurance, pension contributions, so all that side of it will be taken.
And obviously Karen will be double checked before she transfers the money.
That's good, thank you. Councillor Black?
I was a little bit interested in your comment about double checking, because normally when you have a payroll provider, they're the ones that do that. Are you going to be using the resources of the two of you, or really including the assistant town clerk, to actually check the figures? Because that...
It's very easy to do.
Well, I don't know, but it does seem to have never been a payroll system whereby you employ an agency to do it and then you do it yourself.
No, they do the calculation. You just
I understand that, but I've been told that you're going to check the calculations.
Yeah, so basically, when I'm used to, I'll get payroll providers report, and I have communicated to them the overtime for each member of staff, any sickness. So I am just checking that what they have on that report reflects what I've instructed, because...
That's slightly different.
Okay.
In fact, it's very different. That's to check that the data input is correct.
Yes, correct.
So that's a completely different matter from actually checking that the monies are correct.
No, I meant checking the data has been entered correctly.
Has that answered your question?
And the other bit, I'm a bit, I mean, pensions can be incredibly complex depending on ABCs and everything else like this. So I was a little bit surprised that you're not getting the payroll agency to do all of this for you, because believe me, I know a bit about pensions, having been a pensions trustee. That can be an incredibly complex exercise. And I was a bit surprised that you're still doing a lot of it in-house.
No, they're doing it for us.
So with the local government pension scheme,
Yeah.
it's all set up on a system,
Yeah.
which Karen at the moment enters the information. So it would be potentially the payroll provider that will be doing that side of things, but we will be making the payment to KCC for the local government pension.
Okay, and that will be a lump sum payment, which then through their system, they then allocate to individuals'
Yes,
pension accounts.
yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay. Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I don't know if people have finished asking their questions about the process, because I want to look at the bottom line, as it
Yeah.
were.
Okay, then did we have any further
Well,
questions?
I just wonder, how many actually employee will pay? 10. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Over to you, Councillor
Maybe-
Anderson.
Because I'm not clear. I mean, one of these quotes is for more than 3 times the other quote, the bottom quote, as it were. And I'm not sure whether any analysis has been done as to what the differences are between what they're going to be doing, these companies, because it does seem a very extreme difference. I mean, one would normally expect them to be somewhat similar, and 2 of them are sort of within range of each other, but there's one that's a great deal less. So if we're going for the, you know, to go for cheap and cheerful, as it were, I want to know what the cheerful bit is.
Yeah.
What are they cutting out?
I was going to say just the same actually, just to take the floor. I think from the 3 quotations that we're looking at tonight, we've got to really, this committee have got to decide, are we actually going for the basics of just paying payroll, which is the very bottom one, or do we want the one with the bells and whistles, which has got, I think to answer Councillor Anderson's question, is obviously, because still being in employment myself, you get these portals. So what it is the employees can actually go onto the portals and they can pick up their pay slips and their P60s. That's what happens at the employer where I work, and I know they pay quite a large amount of money to have that portal there. Obviously the one at the very bottom is just saying that they're just doing the monthly payroll and the monthly pensions, and although the employees will get some form of pay slip or pay notification, they won't have an electronic portal to log on to or any support. That's what I believe is the question.
That's the main difference, isn't it?
No, it's not. If you look at the first line, it says, payroll reports accessed via online portal. You will be given a secure login.
Yes.
Oh,
So they are
sorry,
doing, they're all doing portals.
They
They
are.
are
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
portals.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, no, well interrupted.
Yeah. No, there is a portal
Yeah.
that company provides, and it can actually record annual leave and lots of other things
Yeah.
for
Oh,
employees
excellent.
as well.
That's good.
So I suppose my question is sort of completely flipping it in the sense that the employees today, the service, if you went for the lowest price, would they see a similar service? Would they see lesser service? Would they see maybe even an improved service? So where does the lowest pitch itself in terms of what they currently experience?
I think they would see an improved service even with the lower
Yeah.
end, because it means that they will have access to the portal, they'll be able to log in and look at their pay slips, their P60s, and it keeps a record of, you know, all
That's-
their
Yeah.
pay slips,
All the-
which obviously at the moment we have to ask Karen to share with us.
Yeah.
So
And the second part of that is, therefore, if you took that as a service rather than cheap and cheerful, it maybe meets the requirement. Is there anything that is offered by either the other two that you would say actually we can't live without that.
Exactly.
When I've read all three, and for me, the bottom one at the cheapest rate is what I'm familiar with in the workplace. So it doesn't look alarming at all. But is there anything in the other two bids that you think actually we really need that, either from a resource perspective or from an offer to the staff?
For me personally, I can't see anything that is missing from the bottom quote. I would like to just check with Karen as well that she's in agreement with that.
Finance officer.
I can't see anything missing, but I would say that any of these are going to make my life easier. And as you rightly said in the last meeting, that it's better that I don't do
Indeed.
payroll
Yeah.
because I'm
We wish,
practicing my own.
as
So
an employer, we wish to take
any
away
of
that.
them would be better than me
Indeed.
doing it. So.
That's true. And just to sort of speak first of all, is when I did read through these all last night, I did see, I mean, with I think it was the DCK one, you know, it did seem as if it was aimed at perhaps a multinational, with all due respect to the DCK one.
Yeah.
So, and I was just wondering whether, but obviously it's the committee's decision, not mine, whether we needed something that extended to that extent, but obviously that's for you to decide. Councillor Breen, did you have a question?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'd just like clarification on, in terms of what's your intent, in terms of the implementation,
Yes.
and is there a minimum term? Are we locked into these companies for 6 months, a year, or whatever? That's kind of the first question, and the follow-on to that then is, obviously it's a new thing. If it doesn't work out, what are the termination provisions so that we can move on to
Good
another
question.
organisation?
Town clerk.
So 1 year is the normal time that you would lock it in to a provider. In terms of termination, I'm not too sure what their terms would be, but I can certainly find that out for the 18th of December.
Okay, and when are you hoping to implement it from? Is it going to be from the start of the new year in April, or are you going to try and get it in before then?
I was thinking from the new year.
Good.
So from January or
January.
April?
From
January.
January.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Councillor Black?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that two of them have apparently no client lists. And I had a quick look at them, and DM Payroll Services does seem to be an extremely small organisation. If I read it correctly, 2 people. The difficulty with that is that should one of them become ill, there's very little backup by the sound of it. But yes, I believe they both came out of, certainly one that came out of local government, so there's experience of that, and that's extremely valuable. But that did make me a bit twitchy to have just, I know it's a small payroll, but it's an absolutely crucial function that we've got. And could I get some flavour as to what sort of clients they've got? DCK also surprised me by having no client list that I could find. The other one goes into we do X, Y, and Z, both parish and district, I think. We don't need to have to do a whole county. But I was a bit surprised at the absence of any clients. Could you enlighten us a little bit by any chance?
So DM Payroll Services have a lot of local council clients. I know that personally.
And I'm assuming this is the group that you've used before.
I have had experience, yes, where I worked previously, they were our payroll provider, and they have serviced or do service a lot of local councils. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but I know it's multiple councils.
Sorry, I would comment to you, Ian, is that the risk of them having just 2 employees is no greater than where we are at the moment.
In fact, it's half the risk.
Sorry, they've got 2.
They've got half the risk.
Also, I'd like to say, councillors, that whatever decision we make now, obviously the town clerk can, because there's a lot of questions about business continuity here. So the town clerk, whatever decision we make, the town clerk can actually say, we would like to put this business with you. Could you give us some understanding of your business continuity strategy, just to make sure? And I mean, we don't know, they could have a link to like a payroll agency company where somebody can come in literally the next day or something like that. So, and if they're able to tell the town clerk that, then we know that they've got cover. So
I think there's a number of points that we've discussed, and if you're bringing this to council, if you've got the answers to those, Jill, then I think we're good to go.
Okay.
I'll be happy with that.
Okay then.
Thank
So
you.
if that's all the questions, I need somebody to make a proposal and then somebody to second that. So
I'm happy to propose that DM payroll services are recommended to the full council to be the outsourced payroll provider.
thank you. And do we have a second?
I second.
Oops, and 2 seconds there.
That's
So,
right, so-
and could I vote on that? All those in favour, please signify.
I abstain because it has to be provisional upon them providing the information that we have asked for. And that's the reason for my abstention.
Okay.
Right,
No
indeed,
problem.
that's right.
Okay.
Item number 7, data protection, GDPR, freedom of information support. And the town clerk seeks support of F and GP committee for a proposal that STC subscribes to a service called Council Hive Premium from Breakthrough Communications. This is attachment number 4, and a decision is required on this. I just wanted to say up front that I'm sort of very upset that this has basically come about due to serial FOI objectors who are sending FOIs in on a repeated or serial basis, and I think this is needs to be shown to the public that actually what's happening here is the people that are sending in these serial FOIs are actually taking up taxpayers' money, that we've now got to make this decision on whether or not we bring in a professional company at taxpayers' expense. So that's all I wanted to say up front, and it's very disappointing. In the 17 years I've been here, the number of FOIs have been very, very few, and just recently, of course, it's been a massive burden on the town clerk, who of course is trying to rebuild the staffing of the council. Councillor Chuka, can I bring you in?
I think you must have seen my notes.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm equally disappointed, and you've really answered what I was going to ask. But just to play it back, what you're saying is that we have got what is outside the norm in terms of FOIs and subject access requests, and also it's coming from one particular camp, shall we say, in terms of seeking that. So it's repeating from the same sources, looking for the information.
Indeed,
That's right.
correct.
So the only other question I did have was more around the value of using an outside company, because I've looked on their website, I've read through the material, it's all, you know, come to us, we'll sell you a deal that will help you, but it doesn't really drill down. So I wanted to know, the town clerk has mentioned getting toward, in the proposal, getting towards the end of what they provide in terms of service versus cost, and there is a value therefore of flipping over to an annual subscription. Practically, what have they done for you in terms of the time invested so far? So it's the practical stuff rather than the glossy, we're here to support you.
Yes. So basically what's happened, I have had multiple freedom of information. I've actually had 6. I've had 2 data subject access requests, and basically I have been able to call upon this company for professional support. So they are not data protection officers. I am still a data protection officer.
Yeah.
But when I'm faced with multiple freedom of information requests, I am not an expert in the legislation. I have a working knowledge, so I do need to rely on professional support in that capacity, and they have been doing FaceTime calls, so I've been doing Zoom team calls with them, spoken about the intricate details of the freedom of information, feeding back my interpretation of the legislation just to check that my interpretation is correct, because obviously it's very important for the council, because what we don't want to do is, you know, suffer fines from the ICO because we haven't actually complied with our.
So I know it's quite a difficult path to travel legally, but also timescale driven events. Can you just, in terms of flavour of a subject, because I know subject access requests, I've been involved in those from my previous work experience. It can be quite an immense task. So when you get one, what does that mean in practical terms for anybody in relation? Because it's actually it's a trawl of emails in effect, if it's around emails, for example. But it's data information held on an individual. What sort of volumes are we talking about for a subject access request that you have to manage?
So currently there is one outstanding that I now know there is nearly 1,600 emails to consider. And that equates, I think if I worked it out 5 minutes per email, something like 17.
They all need to be reviewed and redacted.
And redacted, you're talking about 17 days worth of work. That's just one. So it's quite a commitment and quite a task.
And is that, can I just
and
is that work, we paid for that work, have we? Or is that work that will be invoiced in future in addition to the £750 which we've already paid?
So what I had to do initially is to gauge the support of this company, just to really work my way through the initial impact of what we were facing. That support near the end of that expenditure. So this expenditure was done a few weeks ago. Now at the end of that support, because it's only a limited number of hours, the company have agreed, because we've obviously needed that time, you know, in a short space of time, which most councils wouldn't get through the year. They've agreed that we could actually take the annual subscription, and they are prepared to deduct the amount of money we paid initially from the annual subscription, so it won't cost us any more than the annual subscription, even though we've actually had the support previously for a number of hours already.
Okay, so just to be clear,
Yes.
the work that is still in train would, if we agreed to this annual subscription, come out of the annual, I mean, it would be part of the annual subscription package.
Yes, because what you're getting with the annual subscription package is unlimited support.
Right.
So it doesn't matter next year if you had 30 FOIs, which I hope we don't, but if you did, you have unlimited support for the duration of that subscription.
Yes, and presumably the company has the expertise and experience to advise as to whether the FOIs that keep coming, and let's hope that they don't, because I think there is certain motivation about all this, but if they continue, then the company presumably can advise, because as I've looked at some things about this legislation, and there is this element that if you make a judgment that the FOI is vexatious, then you can say it's vexatious, and they can then appeal to the Information Commission officer. Is that right? So the company would be in a position then to make that decision.
Yes, so basically this professional support, and they are impartial, they are local government experience, they are the people that I would trust to give me the right interpretation of the legislation, because that's really what it is about. And certainly I trust this company, are highly professional. They actually train via Kent Association Local Councils, so they're highly respected. GDPR and FOI is only part of what they offer, so this is all around early compliance, because that is essential to avoid fines, and the capacity of me as a town clerk is stretched at present, and there's no signs that this is going to ease in the new year. In practical terms as well, I can book the call with the data protection specialist, and I can talk through the interpretation of GDPR. And also they give advice on policies and procedures, which I think is going to be key for us in the new year as well. And they talk about best practice for communication. So communications is another tool in the box that they offer, which I think will be really vital.
Can I pull in Councillor Gray, who's been waiting?
Yes, I was going to raise a point which Councillor Anderson has about vexatious requests, whether they are advising you on that. And as I also understand it, under the FOI Act, you are entitled, you can request a payment from the person requesting the information. Is that being done, and are they advising you on that?
Yes, so I'm keeping a record of all the time I'm spending
You are.
and all the expenditure that the council is and yes, I'm taking advice from them on that as
Yeah,
well.
fine, good.
And are they obliged to make that payment to pay any costs?
So obviously, if you get to that situation, you need to give the person the upfront
It's all
information.
cost. Normally, yes.
Yeah,
There's
yes.
usually a warning when you
Get a warning.
Yes,
Yes.
when you get to a
a
certain
letter that says
level.
this may cost money.
Yeah.
We will come back to you if it does.
And are they legally obliged
Yes,
to
well,
pay those
we'll
Yeah.
get
costs?
the information without paying for it.
Yes.
Can I just ask you to put your hands up if you're speaking, so I can do it in order?
Mm.
Councillor Black, please.
Yeah, so they provide you with the detailed advice and best ways of doing things, and also for how to future-proof the council, and that's very good. But the legwork on the individual records still has to be done by yourself at the moment.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, now I can understand the importance of that, and it's very important to have some independent advice. On the subject of requiring, I don't think it's a request, I think you can require payment. You've got to make it clear up front that if you want this data, it will cost you, not, you know, initially you say it may, but then once you know the scope of it, I suggest that's something that needs to be explored. How long does this last? Are we suggesting this is something, we can't predict the future clearly, but is this an annual rolling contract?
So you don't have to renew after a year, but you will have the option to renew after
Right.
a year.
Okay, on a similar sort of basis,
Yes.
obviously they may have changes in their fee structure. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
I
Councillor Graham.
would certainly recommend to the meeting that we ought to go ahead with this. I think I know from my own personal experience that it's an absolute minefield, the FOI, the data protection legislation. And I really think that it's important, very important that we get it right. And I think that we should go ahead and agree with this proposal.
And could I have a second? Is that
Can I
proposal?
just
Yeah,
ask
indeed.
an additional question, because we are now committing to an annual subscription of 2,000 plus, well, just under 2,000 plus that. So where does that fit in the draft budget which we're coming to?
Finance officer.
Yeah, I have made the assumption.
We don't like
But with
assumptions.
the capacity to remove that with my laptop here, that we may go ahead with this.
Okay,
So that is built into the budget.
thank you.
Councillor Breen.
Sorry, can I ask then the value of this contract, because it's a rolling contract, are we okay with just having one quotation?
Yes, it's underneath the threshold.
Have you got another question?
No, I'm happy to say.
Okay, so we've got a proposal on the floor from Councillor Gray, and we've got a seconder in Councillor Tuka. So all those in favour of going ahead with this? No abstentions?
Presumably we'll review this in a year's time,
In a year's time.
at the December meeting of Finance and General Purposes 2024.
That's correct. Item number 8 is a proposal for Town Council magazine news. The Town Clerk to share a report that outlines the proposal for the Town Council to publish a bi-monthly magazine that contains news from the Town Council as well as helpful information for the community and residents. The Town Clerk seeks the support of the F&GP Committee for recommendation to STC and STBF on the 18th of December 2023. This is attachment number 5 and a decision is required. I would like to start off the questions on this one. This is something that I know the Town Clerk actually mentioned to me when I interviewed her quite some time ago now, several months ago, and it's something that I would like and I think is a good idea, but that's failed in a couple of queries and questions. And the first one of my queries or questions would be to do with the time spent on undertaking this in comparison to how much workload you've got currently. So could you tell the committee how long it would need to take to edit or produce this magazine, please? Thank you, Town Clerk.
So my cunning plan was to email all councillors so that when there is the deadline to meet for the magazine, everybody knows that well in advance. The publisher takes the content, so it's usually Word documents for articles and separate photographs if there are photographs or diagrams or something you want to attach. And I would love that the councillors actually work on some articles. Usually produce between 18 and 20 articles, so spread across the council. That's not very much at all. I would normally do probably 3 or 4 or 5 maybe, depending on how many others are taken on by others. But it's certainly, I know from what I've seen of the councillors we have on this council, I don't think that would be too much to ask, because I think there are people here with some good working skills and lots of ideas about articles, and I do think it will be a really great publication.
And my second question around this matter was, I'm knowledgeable that there's a number of the villages that have been mentioned in this report that do have their own newsletters. One of my provisos would be to actually go forward with this, perhaps just my preference, and it's nobody else's preference perhaps, but just to keep this to actually the Sandwich Town to begin with, and then see if there was any benefit, if there was any call from the villages to do this. I do know a number of the villages have their own village or village magazines, and particularly some of the churches have their own magazines. We're particularly unlucky here that St Clement's Church used to have something called the Signal, and unfortunately during COVID that stopped, so we haven't actually got something for the town. But if this went ahead, I think if we included all the villages, I think we could be stepping on the toes of other magazines or newsletters. And I think if I was living in somewhere like Staple, would I want to know about what the town council are doing in Sandwich? So, and with that, I will shut up and hand over to Councillor Chuka. Thank you.
So I had a couple of points. I think it's a really good idea. I think it's important that we communicate outwards to our residents, and at the moment there's a real gap around that. We do have to demonstrate what we're doing, but we also need to, through our actions, demonstrate that some of the alternative views that are expressed elsewhere are actually invalid. So it's not about going head on, it's about having our own path in terms of communicating. So I think it's a really good idea, but I would be happy to include the villages, subject to talking to the relevant contact points in those areas, just to see their view in terms of it. So I don't think necessarily we need to make a decision this minute. I think we need to see what the villagers would say, because I did try to find some newsletters and I struggled. So yes, but I might not have looked at the right village or 2 villages. However, my key factor here is I think bi-monthly is challenging. I would suggest quarterly for the first year, but there has to be a framework around this. We need to have content guidelines. We need to have a timeline that everybody understands. It's not about an email dropping out of the blue to say, can you do something? We need to think about images for the newsletter. This isn't just photographs.
No.
So we need to think about graphs. We need to think about representation of data. We need to also think about making sure it stays relevant and accurate. Too many times I see things like other publications, I was named on, where you read it and you think, actually, that's out of date, and the person who wrote the article, time has moved on. So it needs to be relevant and accurate. So leading times to publishing seems important. And we also need, very importantly, as a gatekeeper role all around this. So we need a review and approval activity. Having been involved in terms of contributing to communication processes before, you have to have a gatekeeper, so it all hangs together, that there is a challenge back in terms of some of the information. So all of that is a process, and that's why it then leads me back to, I think quarterly for me would be the right starting point rather than every second month.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I've got some comments as well. I don't think Ash and Eastry identify with Sandwich. I think they do have high profiles in many respects as villages, and Eastry particularly, as we've now learnt from Christina doing an analysis of what goes on in Eastry, has its own activities, and I don't think we would be in good odour if we tried to inform Eastry and Ash about what goes on in Sandwich. Similarly, but I do think that Woodmansborough and Worth are close enough, and also bureaucratically close enough in the case of Woodmansborough, for them to share interests with what Sandwich councillors want to tell them about what goes on in Sandwich. So I would include Sandwich, and I would include Woodmansborough, Marshborough and Worth, but cut out Ash and Eastry. The second point is about, that I want to make, is about advertising revenue, because as I understand it, these free magazines are funded really by advertising revenue, and I don't pick up from this report whether any research has been done as to whether advertisers who presumably produce enough revenue to get the Sandwich Community Ad magazine, make it viable, whether those same advertisers or additional advertisers would be interested in advertising in the kind of magazine that we're proposing.
Can I hand over to the town clerk, because she's undertaken this on a previous.
Thank you, yes. So what I would say is, around the villages, in my experience, there is often people that are in the villages that come into a town like Sandwich. So they are usually wanting to hear about events in Sandwich. I'm not necessarily saying as well that we're not going to tread on people's toes, because how I think we should approach it is to talk to the parish councils that are in these areas, seek their opinion. Any local churches, like the Mayor said, seek their opinion. It might be that actually some of the smaller villages want to contribute to articles to the magazine.
Yes.
That means then that they would have a buy-in into the magazine, and it makes it much more relevant for them as well. So I think there are conversations to be had, and that's why I wanted to be upfront with everybody, put this on the report so that it's food for thought really. But also I'm mindful that if I didn't get into the budget, we've missed the opportunity for this coming financial year. Exactly. And sorry, the other point was about advertising. So what I would say is, some of the publications that you see, there is a heavy on the advertising, light on content. What I'm proposing is heavy on content, lighter on advertising. So it is, that's why you are paying as well, because obviously the more space they sell for advertising, the less the publisher has to the money they have to find to print and distribute. But what I'm talking about is something that's going to be a town council led and owned magazine, because it's actually driving on the content, and it can stipulate the articles, the data. I mean, for instance, the budget for next year. What a great way to share with the residents and the outside community, to say this is our proposed budget, these are all our data, to represent why we've got this in the budget, and projects we're working on, events that we're facilitating or supporting. It's a great tool.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Yes, thank you. Well, if we're going to have it be on Sandwich, then as suggested, the boundary might well be Sandwich Ward, according to Dover District Council, which of course includes Sandwich Bay, which I notice is not here. Whether you include Worth or not, which is technically not Sandwich anymore, is a moot point. The second thing is that how are you actually going to physically distribute this, and is this going to cost? Because I don't see anything in there. I think thirdly that you suggested getting 18 articles and so on. I take it that was per annum, or it can't be per issue.
It's per issue. Yeah, it's per issue. Yeah.
And how many pages is this going to have?
It depends on the number of articles that we have. But these are things that we can drill down into. This was purely me asking for an estimated price. I can't tell you at the moment exactly how many articles. I'm just saying, you know, usually I'm used to between 18 and 20 in a magazine. And this actually, sorry, the other point, Councillor Blackwell,
Was how you're going to physically distribute and the cost of that.
Yeah, so the cost includes the
Right,
printing, you know, working around, and I've forgotten the phrase that the publisher uses, when they have to,
Producing a copy.
research, mail shop?
no, it's actually make the articles fit on the paginate.
Oh,
Yeah,
Pagination,
yeah,
right. So it's
pagination.
layout, pagination,
Yes.
and the professional stuff.
Yes,
It'd be the responsibility of the editor to actually generate the content through others, and then they will do the rest, and the pagination, the professional layout,
yes,
subject to the editor's
Yes.
overall saying, no, I really want
And
this
the-
article first.
yeah, the printing of the publication and the delivery of the publication. So the council doesn't have to do any of that, that's all taken care of by the
Okay. I have to say, I'm still sceptical that you're going to get, even 4 times a year, 18 contributions. I'm extremely sceptical, having seen other voluntary organisations and how it's like pulling teeth.
I had Councillor Gray next. Could I call Councillor Gray and then
I was
Councillor
going to
Mrs.
ask one about distribution. Secondly, I was going to say that trying to get 18 articles is going to be very, very hard. It's easy saying there are 60, you know, they're all of us, but I know how difficult it is. And I don't know how, I mean, I would like to have seen some sort of mock-up of what the thing is like that, you know, look like, size, etc. And, you know, how long do you expect these articles to be? How many words would you be looking for?
So it depends on, obviously, if there's a lot of data, photographs or you know, other things, it's usually between 500 and 1,000 words.
Right.
And literally I have got mock-ups, because I've got actual examples of where I came from, magazines downstairs in my office, and you're welcome to come and have a
I'd
look.
like to see those, yes.
Councillor Mrs. Carter was next, and then Councillor
Yes,
Green.
my idea is it's nice to have a magazine, but you can also do electronic magazine, then solve the problem of distribution. So you can have the magazine electronically, so everybody can look on the iPad or computer. So you don't have to have printed, that will save the cost, and distribute it. So you can still have advertising, sorry, that's just my idea.
Yeah,
That Councillor Green next.
that kind of aligns with where I am, because whilst I kind of think it's a good idea, and yes, we promised we would engage, the website is our #1 priority, and I, you know, would put forward that any proposal, we've got to get the website up and running. And I think there's a conflict here because these articles would go on the website and then they can be published, you know, very, very quickly. And I don't know what implementation date you're thinking of, but we've really, I can't stress it enough, the website must take the priority in terms of all of this. And there is absolutely, it's a nice to have, and if you're going to distribute anything, we should be distributing leaflets directing people to the website in the first instance. I'm really concerned about the actual effectiveness of magazines because a lot of people just throw them in the bin. Some of them get wasted, some of them don't even get pushed through the doors when you're paying for it. And so for me, it's a really nice to have, but this council has got a lot of catching up to do on other work. We've already hearing about, you know, the freedom of information requests and the backlog of work that needs doing. we're still not up to a full complement of people. And I really think it's a nice to have, but we should shelve it for another 12 months.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councillor Chuka and then Councillor Black. Last questions, by the way.
So, what I was going to say was that in terms of timing, I assume that it would be the end of the first quarter of the next financial year. So it's not imminent. I think I've had a number of conversations with various residents at different times about how they do not use information technology in terms of accessing information. We do have a gap to plug. I think if we were just to stretch out the time scales of the repeat publication, do it for the first year. If the costs come within what's suggested, I think it's important that we do communicate. Back to your point, Peter, was about the fact of we did say we were going to engage better, more transparently with the public. The website is really important, and I think this is a partner communication, so I would support it.
Okay, so I think we've had all the questions now. We really need to be moving ahead on things. Is it a very quick one?
It is. I can understand why you want to put it in the budget, and I am not actually opposed to putting it in the budget. I think resource-wise, you're not going to be able to look at this until the second half of this coming year. I think your workload, the workload of all of your team, is just too great to do it at the moment. I would endorse the point that you need paper as well as electronic, because A, given the nature of the population, we've got a lot of people who are not connected electronically, and secondly, a lot of people who really don't want to use it. This is where I disagree with Peter, and I agree with so I would suggest that you put it in the budget, but I think you take a review. We have a sort of a mid-term budget review. I think you then have another review as to whether you keep it in the budget, that's it. But I agree, put it in now, but I don't think you're going to have the staff resources to look at it until halfway through the year. I think it's an excellent idea. I am still sceptical about it will generate 18 articles of up to 1,000 words per issue, even at 4 issues a year. I hope I'm proved wrong, but I don't think I will be.
Did you have
Yes,
a final question?
I have a comment. If it's just councillors contributing, I think we run the risk of annoying people. You know, that we're trying to spin things so that the council looks good. I think one way of resolving that is to have a letters page, but that would need some editing, so people can come back. But I would prefer it if it were a magazine which didn't just include councillors, saying, you know, what a good job we're doing, or what a very difficult and complicated job we're doing, or both. So, because I think that might annoy people, so I just wanted to mention.
Town clerk, finally.
No, I wouldn't
Thank you.
Finally, the town
agree
clerk.
with that.
Yeah, so I
Shouldn't be,
wasn't proposing that councillors go on there and talk about what they're doing personally as a councillor. This was more about council projects, events. I mean, myself and Councillor Suker have actually written an article each today, just in a few
How
hours.
many words?
No, I didn't count all the
1,000.
words. So I can assure you that once the council, you know, starts doing and you know, projects and things start happening, it's very, very easy to think that, you know, you've got half a dozen articles in a fortnight, because there will be different projects and things happening. You know, things like the market, you know, we've had the peace ceremony, deputy supper, you know, even the mayoral things, you know, because you can have view from the mayor, could be a front
That's
page.
what I do currently for
Yeah.
community ads. Thank you very much for that, Town clerk. So, okay, so from the chair, I'm going to put forward that we actually undertake a budget provision for a magazine, but that Jill comes back with the answers to the number of questions that we have here, and the example make up the copies that we can see, that this budget provision is put in and that it is reviewed. So there's a review as to the budget, whether it's used, and whether the idea actually goes ahead based on staff resources.
Yes.
So on those provisions, I would like to put that forward. Did I have a second of that?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And all those in favour? Should we set a figure for this? Because it's got to be set. We've got to have a figure.
We have a figure.
Is there a figure on it?
Yes, there is, yes.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
beg pardon.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think Councillor Green abstained.
Oh, beg your pardon. Did you against? Sorry, beg your pardon.
Maybe you can vote against
Autism.
at this stage.
Oh, did you?
I think I
Against.
prefer to vote against at
Okay,
this
That's
stage.
fine. That's
I'm
not a
quite
problem
happy
at
to review it in 6 months, and I was disappointed that you didn't say that we're going to make the website a priority. So.
Yeah.
all. I thought that was a given, but thank you. Okay, and now we go back to item number 5, which is the second draft of the budget for 2024-25. Members are to receive and consider the second draft of the proposed budget for the financial year 2024-25 from the responsible financial officer. Notes are included in yellow on the changes that have been made in comparison to the first draft. Please note, forecasts have also been updated as of the 30th of November 23. This is attachment number 2, and we do need a decision on this tonight. So, are there any questions or comments that I can take from the floor? Financial officer?
Would you like me just to talk through the changes?
Oh, indeed, yeah, sorry, yeah,
I-
indeed,
I
that might
don't
be
know.
helpful.
Yeah, I don't know whether you can see this, you seem a long way away.
Okay.
Can you actually see that?
Can anybody see okay?
Um,
Could I just ask Christina, that big ad is sort of obscuring a little bit of it. That's fine, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can everybody see it okay? Because it's important you see it. It can be zoomed in on, you see, so.
Oh, Zoom.
yeah,
Zoom.
do I need to zoom?
Is everybody
Yes,
okay?
please.
Yeah,
Oh,
fine.
okay. Would you go
That's
to
okay.
zoom a little bit?
But we have got it in front of us.
You've got it in front.
We've got it here as well.
Yeah, okay. If I zoom any more, I'll lose things
Oh,
off
okay.
the edge, so
Very
it
well.
might be a bit more tricky. But if you can cope, then
Okay.
I'll leave it like this.
Pro, go ahead.
Yeah, I had limited capacity producing the first draft, but luckily I've been able to spend a bit more time on this draft, and I've updated the forecast as at the end of the year using the figures from October and November as well, so I've got a better forecast this time. This has enabled me to calculate the balance brought forward slightly larger than I calculated before, and that's made it easier to make the changes that we talked about in the first meeting. So I'll just go through the changes. I've increased the budget for mayoral expenses back to the original amount, and I've taken the budget for the mayor's hospitality and done a separate exercise for each civic event and made sure that that is should be enough for the year. We have both spoken to Dover, who hosted Speakers Day, and they've given us a bit of an idea of a better size budget. So that's been put in there. But I've also got down below an income budget with a target for contribution. And that's what we did last time we had Speakers Day, so I've put that income budget in. As we've spoken about tonight, I've put an increased GDPR cost in office expenditure, and I have put the £3,000 community engagement budget in. Obviously, if you weren't going to go ahead with that, I'd take it out at this stage. I have realigned the allotment budget so that it is reduced to a slightly smaller rent, and that's in line with the income budget, so they equal each other. I've increased the disability access strategy budget.
Yes, thank you.
The miscellaneous budget has changed, but that's my balancing item, so I sort of go back to that at the end. We talked about the Monkswell Nature Reserve budget, which I think I've gone past, reducing that down to £5,000 per year. So I've done that. That has obviously freed up budget, and I've also, with that larger forecast, been able to increase this amount, which is the contribution to the Tollbridge Fund. We can also discuss that tonight. Not everyone might agree on that.
Yes.
I've changed the precept to 5% uplift, which was our target, and I have introduced that Speakers' Day income stream. I've left an income stream here for events on the forecourt. We don't know this yet, but I've put that in. We can't actually put a budget in until we've had that discussion and come to a resolution on that. So, but we do have to bear in mind that we've got the loan going out each year, and we're not meeting that at present. So yeah, that's the town council budget.
Okay, so open the floor to questions. Councillor Black.
Yeah, this speaker's contribution, I thought this was an event that was as a result of being the lead port this year. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So why are speakers paying us?
No, they're attending us.
They're attending?
They have to pay for it, because they're attending for a meal.
Oh, they're paying, okay, right, thank you. When he said speakers, I thought something different. It's the nomenclature.
Indeed, yeah. So explain. Councillor Chuka.
You've answered some, Karen, thank you. You also answered some questions I asked with you offline, so that's really good. But I've still got a couple of smaller detail that I want to make sure I understand. But also I've got some more significant comments. So just starting from the top, there is reference to the other expenditures of the key conveniences set at just under 7,000. What does that cover?
That will cover utilities,
Right.
and any repairs and maintenance, and cleaning costs.
Yes, so it's everything over and above the salaries and
Yes.
the standard costs. Okay, that's fine, thank you. If I just play areas, 6,700. I've assumed that's a maintenance budget. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a contract with Dover District Council.
Yeah.
We pay them annually, and they maintain the play areas in Sandwich for us. This contract is currently being renegotiated, but we haven't been charged for a year, so I'm expecting a charge.
Okay. So thank you. And then the significant comments I had were the line relating to the forecourt. We discussed at the last STC that we wanted to see that the historic market earnings weren't seen as a contributing factor to the paying of the loan, and I think there's general agreement to that, but it's still in there. That might be just because it hasn't caught up. But this is about what we need to do is focus on effort to have the over and above what the market previously used to generate. So we need to take a baseline figure, show that separately, and then we aim to generate more income. And then that leads on to the gap, the zero for the events, etc. We do need to put something in there because we do know certain events that will happen, and we should be able to at least put an estimate in there for those in there. Also, I do notice that P22 has the same electricity charge as the previous year. How do we arrive at that figure? Because it seems very low, and obviously it's influenced by market forces. So I'm not sure why we have the
Is it
same
needed?
figure. It
Is it
is,
needed?
yes. Well, that was where I was going to go, Peter. You jumped in there. This is good to have
So
someone
you paying for the
else.
lights?
Okay, I didn't hear.
It's heating, it's lighting,
P22 electricity
Yes,
costs.
yes.
Yeah, they have a meter at the key conveniences, and that needs to be read, and then I need to do a reimbursement, an invoice to the P22
right.
county, and that is something that I still need to do for this financial year.
Okay, so they are metered and they are charged the appropriate level. There's no
Yes.
discounted level for them. They get
No, they
That's
get
fine.
charged, and it's based on our metered rate. So
that's good. It's good to know.
Super.
I think they're probably the key things I wanted to get.
And then I had Councillor Gray next, and then Councillor Mrs Carter.
Looking at, apart from the precept, the biggest item on this budget is the contribution towards the Guildhall Fund, which I always go on about. I notice you've increased the contribution from 113,000 to 125,000. Does that mean the Turbridge Fund are contributing less than in the original budget? Or are they contributing the same and you've upped what the contribution will be?
the transfer from reserves figure has gone down a little,
In the
so
Turbridge
that the
Fund?
income taken from investments has gone down a little.
So the Turbridge Fund are contributing less than the original budget, and
Yes.
and the
Yes.
council is contributing
Slightly
more.
more, yes.
I still query how that is apportioned between the council and the Turbridge Fund, and I just don't understand. I've never understood.
Oh, we're looking at that in terms of the working group.
Yeah, the working group will be.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Now I know that will be looked at in time,
Yes.
but anyway, okay.
Okay, Councillor
My
Mrs
question
Carter.
is like income coming from the key convenience, very little income coming to the police, yeah. And then we still pay the staff, and how are we going to deal with this? And we can't be continuously toiling for free. Because we should have some income at least paid towards staff costs. My question, I know it's currently free, how long are we allowed to be free?
That's
my question is,
yeah,
do
that'd be a decision for the council to make.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
initially I can't remember how long we initially suggest, the summertime we left. for
we
free.
said to the end of the year,
What,
so a
financial year
decision,
or
no to the calendar year.
which is
So
December.
a decision would have to be made
And
in
how many-
January.
And then also as it's at the moment open all the time. In winter, how many people actually
Well,
use it?
no, the hours on the toilets were reduced for winter
Oh,
hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but that is a decision
Yeah,
that
so we
would
used to
have
have
to be made
£5,800 coming.
by the council, yeah,
Yeah.
in January's
Yeah,
meeting,
because we shouldn't be subsidised all the time. My personal opinion.
of course. Yeah, no problem, no. Thank you for that. Councillor Breen?
Karen, could you just go down to the bottom line in terms of the expenditure for the town council, please? Yeah, so I think when you kind of look across the whole bottom line, I think one of the things about the budget is the way that it's communicated. And when you see our approved budget for this year was 446,000, we've then got 283,000 of virements, which I think people need to understand kind of what's behind that.
Yeah.
Because then we've got a revised budget of 730,000.
Yeah.
And so to get from our original budget of 446 to 730, that's up 65%. It
Can I
doesn't.
explain?
Yeah, and
Yes.
just my point. And then we're saying the forecast is 623,000, which is 15% less of the approved budget. And so it's jumping up and down. It doesn't convey a message to the general public that we're in control because it's up and down. And you know, my compliments to you, because the draft budget for next year is 449,000 or 450,000 compared with 446,000, so it's only gone up 1%, you know, so there is good news there. I just think we need to be, in the way we communicate this, both to the council and the general public, it just needs this Karen sprinkle of
Right.
magic.
Thank you.
Shall
Can I bring in the finance
Can I
officer?
explain? We set the budget excluding reserves. So the Monkswell Nature Reserve, which is actually quite a chunk, is removed because that skews the budget. If I put that in, then we are in danger of spending that money in the general pot. So when the year starts at April the 1st, I then bring back the reserve budgets into the budget. So some of that 200,000 is the reserves budgets being moved back in from the previous year. Most of that is the Maddox Fund, which came in and was then obviously moved back into the budget on April the 1st. So it's not part of the general pot. So that's the general pot, and that's the reserve, and any other environment that happens throughout the year. So if we move money around, it will be in that column. So,
I'm really clear about that, and
yeah.
I know these charities are distorting that number. It's just as I say, so maybe there's another terminology or adjustment for Monkswell, Maddox or whatever would really help kind of communicate this.
Okay, thank you for that. Put that into terms. So did I have any more questions on this draft budget before we make any proposal at all? Is there any more questions to make? Councillor.
I suppose my point is a number of questions have been made, but you said it needed to be approved tonight, so I just want to make sure are we going to address these questions?
A decision tonight, so I'm asking if we have any more questions, because obviously the decision that goes forward from this committee would heavily influence the council, I should imagine.
So the key thing for me, it relates to the events and the forecourt and drawing out the historical figures for the market versus the need to generate more income, and putting in some income that we can assume for this year against that loan.
So finance officer, can I ask you, is that a possibility that we can put a figure in for the income?
For events income?
Yeah, that Councillor Tuker's asking about, we can put
I can put a figure in, yes.
have we got any historical
would like
data?
to know some more information before I put something in.
So I'm finalising a report for council, which I'm happy to share with the financial officer, and then we can work together, Karen, on putting a figure, but it will be dependent on the council agreeing the proposed fees that I'm putting forward, and obviously we need to work on, you know, looking at the number of events that we've had historically for 2 years.
And that was my point.
But I'm happy to do that and work with the RFO, but it will be dependent on council decision.
Okay then. So if there's not any more questions, I'd like to propose that this committee accepts this second draft budget, but taking into consideration the questions that have been asked tonight, and in particular about the events budget, having a figure in that in due course before it goes to council, if that's okay.
And the variants, please.
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course. And if possible, if it could be made clear in perhaps layman's terms about the environments, is how we used to call it in council, the environments that are made, so that that's clear of the lower and higher figures at on the bottom line, if that could be. So I would like to propose that we accept this budget with those recommendations, considerations, and take this forward. Would anybody like to second that at all?
I'll second.
You don't have to, yes, okay, so I have to second this, so. And obviously, anybody else can put another proposal after my proposal, but so all those in favour of the proposal that I've put forward and been seconded, please signify. Councillor Mrs Carter, are you
I'm not
voting?
voting.
Okay, so, okay. And any abstaining or objecting, please?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining.
Abstaining,
Thank
okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that, and thank you for the discussion on that. I think we've had a thorough discussion.
And the hard work.
Done the
Yes.
hard work, so.
Karen, bye Karen.
Thank you to the finance officer and the town clerk for the amount of work that they've put in to prepare this budget for the forthcoming year. So thank you very much for that, both of you. Thank you. Okay. On my way back to
You
my-
will be asked what the implications for the precept are, so I think it would be helpful at the town council meeting to have a statement of that.
I can tell you now that at the current tax base, which is 2048.68, it would be £142.76 per Band D property. It's currently £135.96.
So it's a difference
No.
of £11 a year?
Yes,
Thank you. Per household.
per household.
And
which is less than what we'd thought before, wasn't it? So, which is good. So,
So,
oh,
Mr.
the-
Mayor,
So
is
it's
that make
£6.80
meeting
I've
closed?
got.
Indeed.
written
Yeah, I
down.
made it lower than that.
Yeah.
excuse me, if I could just, if we finalise that, item number 9 is date and time of next meeting, and that's Monday the 15th of January 2024 at 6:30 in the council chamber at the Guildhall. Thank you. This meeting is now closed.